pulled up here. We're gonna get the hut set up quick. It's very, very cloudy today, low cloud cover. You can see that off over those trees there in the distance. Sun's just starting to come up, so we're gonna get this hut set up quick and get to fishing here. But these fish might be a bit more shallow today with this low pressure, so we're sitting in about 65 feet here with really shallow water right beside us and deep water on the opposite side. Welcome back, beautiful northern Manitoba, Lake Athabasca, and today we are talking all about rattlebait fishing, aggressive lake trout. So I'm set up on a mid-lake break. It kind of it's just a big wall here, and I'm up shallow. It's a very low pressure day. We've got snow falling, heavy fog. You look around behind me, you can't see anything. It's kind of nice. It just hides all the huts on the lake. You can't see anybody else. They can't see where you are, but there's a mid-lake point here that sticks out underwater, and I'm sitting on the break of it. I'm up in about 65 feet of water right now, and you know, the fish are gonna be more shallow today, so we've got a deadline set in about 71 feet of water, and it's adjacent to super shallow water, so we're expecting to see a lot of fish come at different levels here, off the shallow water and out from the deep. We're going to talk about everything to do with picking the right rattle bait, from colors to sizes to weights, and you know, some upgrades you should make to them if you have to, and then what rods we should use for running these rattle baits. We're going to talk about how to run them and how to work the water with them. We're just going to go over everything to do with rattle bait fishing lake trout today. Let's talk rod setup needed to fish these rattle baits. So you do need to use a bit heavier of a rod. You are ripping that bait pretty aggressively through the water, and a light action rod, even a medium action rod, doesn't have enough backbone to rip that bait effectively through the water. So, you know, your rod selection is going to be based off of what you're fishing out of, first of all. If you're fishing out of you know, a tighter hut and a tighter space, you might not be able to use as long of a rod as you'd like to. Ideally, for this type of bait, I'd go anything from a 38 inch to a 42 inch. I would pick a rod that has a medium heavy action. I would stay away from medium. It just gets a little light for ripping those big rattle baits, and you know, you just need that backbone. Pick something with a moderate to fast action tip. You want something that has some strength in there to rip that rattle bait through the water and you know, aggressively move that bait. A rod with a light tip won't do it for you. It'll just absorb a lot of that action and won't relate it down to the bait. That'll get these rattle baits working properly in the water for you and doing what you want them to do. There we go. Hooked up with one here, right under the ice. Check that out. Just using a Rattle, a rip and wrap. And this guy came in actually crossways from us, and he ripped in fast and smashed. It's been a slow start actually. It's but see you later, buddy. This is the bait I'm using, Rattle Rip and Wrap, size 7. That's a chrome mossback shiner color. I love that color, just a blue iridescent, and it has some green in it. It's got a black top and a bit of white on the bottom. Just a beautiful color out here. There's another fish actually down about 45 feet right now, so let's see if we can get back down there quick enough. These Rattle Rip and Wraps sink really fast. He's already looking at me as this bait's dropping, so he's coming up for it. So I'm going to switch directions. He's underneath it right now. Come on. There he is. Just like that. Fish number 2. But these rip and wraps sink fairly quick for a rattle bait because they have like a V cut on them. And they're able to cut the water as they fall. Let's get this guy in here. He didn't fight too long. He's a little bit better fish. Not a giant, but hey, it's a nice lake trout. And just like that, fish number 2. That guy, I saw him on the graph at about 50 feet, and he came in and chased that bait straight up as I was dropping it. So he came in, hammered it. Nice lake trout. He'll go about 28, 29. Not a monster, but hey, just another beautiful lake trout. That's a good start. 2 fish. Was super slow for me right away, and then boom, 2 fish just like that. So it can change all in a second out here. I was starting to doubt my spot, but it turned around, so we're gonna stick it out a little more. It's just really getting started here, so we'll see what happens. These rattle baits work great all season long. Like when we're guiding, I will always start, if we have multiple people fishing with us, I'll start one person with a rattle bait always and one person with a tube usually. But early season like this, these rattle baits are just the ticket. They just when you have these super aggressive lake trout earlier in the season like this, they just want to chase these things and completely annihilate them. It's so much fun when you get these fish on the graph coming in, and you see a suspended mark 40-50 feet down. You can watch them just race over to this bait about 50-60 feet away and just charge right up and smash it. They absolutely inhale these things, and man, they're just my top bait for early season lake trout fishing for sure. They're just so much fun to work, and the rattles just help attract fish to you, and man, they just work great. Like they're really just one of the best baits for early season lake trout fishing. We catch so many numbers on them, and we catch big fish on them. It's just the ultimate bait for early ice season, like fishing lake trout. It's just the ticket. And there's many different configurations and sizes you can get, but these Rattle Rippin' Wraps are one of the go-tos. They just have a better cut to them. You can see on the body there how they're like a V cut, and they drop and they swim down, and they actually like cut the water as they fall. So they fall probably the fastest out of any rattle baits of the equivalent size. Other ones are very, very square on the bottom or rectangle, and they just tend to like push water as they go down, so they sink very slow. So when you're looking for a rattle bait, look for something that has, well, for big lake trout anyways, that has good hardware on it. You want good split rings, good connections, decent treble hooks. You might have to upgrade your treble hooks on some of the rattle baits for sure, but look for good trebles, look for good split rings, or you can change them out on your own. But look at the body shape of the bait and see if it has that cut. The Rattle Rippin' Wraps do, and you also want one that swims on the way down. Some of them don't swim as they fall, they just kind of fall sideways and push water. It looks super unnatural. Baits like this one, what they actually do is they cut the water and they swim as they go down. So they work both ways. They work on the fall, and they work as you're bringing them up, obviously. But these Rattle Rippin' Wraps are great. They've got that good profile, good sink rate, and they come with good quality hardware on them. So they're a pretty well set up bait right off the bat. But then there's a million different colors you can get. So color isn't really the biggest deal early in the season like this. I mean, you want to natural forage colors for sure, something that matches the forage in the lake that you're fishing. But there's not a big difference if you put on a perch color versus a bright white or a glow color. It really doesn't make a difference, especially this time of year. But hey, choose whatever color you feel works best for you and what you have confidence in, and that's also a big thing. You want to have confidence in the bait that you're running. So that this chrome mossback shiner is the color that I like. I've caught some big fish on it, and it matches a lot of the forage in this lake, so that's what I've chosen to go with. But early in the season like this, color's not a huge deal. Coming in on my right here, he's nosed up to me. You can see on the live scope when they nose up, there you go, he engaged with the bait. He's going to come right up and hit it just like that. This is a little bit bigger fish for sure, a lot nicer. We're barbless here too, so I'm really maintaining pressure, and it's tough with lake trout. You got to remember, like, they're such acrobats that don't get discouraged. You're gonna lose fish. I've lost 2 already today, and it just happens when you're lake trout fishing, especially with the smaller fish. They do so much acrobatics and head shakes, and they're just easily manipulative of their bodies. And check that out, he's hooked pretty good. So super aggressive fish. That one single hook right in the top of the mouth. That was a super aggressive one. He charged right up. Nice healthy lake trout. Not a giant, but hey, beautiful fish. Look at the white fins on them. You got to remember with these lake trout, like you're gonna lose lake trout if you're fishing lake trout. You're gonna lose lake trout in a barbless hook zone for sure. They can just manipulate themselves in different ways. They're little contortionists. They can flip sideways, flip 90 degrees, and they just work themselves around that. You're going to lose them. It's nothing to get discouraged about. Like, it's gonna happen. If you're fishing lake trout, you will lose fish. That's the way it is, especially in a barbless hook zone. They just can manipulate themselves in ways that they get themselves off the hook. So don't get discouraged. Just stick it out, but give them a good hook set, and keep that pressure on him the whole time. We've got one just underneath me. He's not super aggressive, but he's just following it up slowly. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to drop it right past him. He's come up about 10 feet off the bottom, 15 feet. So I'm going to drop it right past him and take it down into like his comfort zone, we'll say. So some of these fish have like a comfortable strike zone, and if you get above it, they will never strike that bait. So I'm going to drop it back down and try to get this fish into his comfortable zone, and we'll see if he can eat this bait. He's not really chasing, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drop it to the sand. I'm just going to twitch it in the dirt, see if he'll pick it up right out of the mud. So hit bottom. Now what I'm going to do is just get to the point where I'm just slack, and then I have tension, slack and tension, and I'm just going to twitch it here right on the bottom and just puff the sand basically. So that bait is just going to flutter just in the sand, and it's just going to create a little dirt puff around it, and we're going to see if this guy will just suck it up right off the bottom. Then every so often, what you lose track of that fish in the bottom range of the graph, so I'll just bring it up and see if he's going to chase it up. If he's sitting there interested in it, they will always chase it back up a little bit, and then I'll drop it back down to the sand and see if he'll engage with it again. There we go. That guy charged up off bottom. This fish was cruising along bottom, and then he came up and smacked it. So much fun fishing rattle baits for these aggressive lake trout. It's just using an aggressive approach on aggressive fish, and produces good results. This guy's fighting good. Lake trout, they're just so much fun to fight. Like, you've got so much water there. Like, this fish hit at about 65. Well, I'm in 65 feet, and this fish hit about 45 feet. So you've got 45 feet of water to play this fish, and they just want nothing to do with it. So it's just so much fun. There we go. You have the whole water column to fight these fish. Check that out. Right in the corner of the lips. Look at that. Super aggressive fish, charged up 15 feet, ate that rattle bait, and put up one heck of a fight. I mean, what's not to love about lake trout fishing? That is just too much fun. Beautiful fish, dude. So much power. They just strike aggressive. They just so much fun to fight. You've got that whole water column to fight these fish. You know, that fish hit at about 45, 48 feet. He charged up from the bottom and he crushed that bait. But then you've got 45 feet to fight that fish. It's not like pike fishing in shallow water. You've got 7 foot depth to 16 foot depth you're fighting a fish in. They've got nowhere to go. They got to go left and right. So your line's always wearing on the side of the hole. With lake trout, it's a vertical fight. And then they still battle when they get close to the top too. But you've just got so much more room to fight these fish. They can go back to the bottom. They can go off to the sides. It's just one heck of a fight, especially when you get a big one. It's one battle. But man, it's just so much fun fighting these fish because you have so much room to fight them and a lot of room to play them. So that just makes lake trout fishing that much more exciting. So the way we're fishing these rattle baits is we're working the whole water column. So what I'm doing here, there's nothing on my graph right now, nothing going on that I can see anyways. So I'm working the bait up. I'm popping it, getting those rattles to work, and then I'm reeling it up the slack, popping it, reeling up the slack. Here's a fish up high actually right now. I'm at about his plane here. See him off to my left there. So he's going the other direction. I'm just gonna rip the rattle bait in place though until he either turns around and engages the bait or he takes off. So he's gone. So let's resume. Okay, so dropping down, we've picked a rattle bait that will swim down, has good action, a good sink rate, and has good quality parts on it that we're gonna be able to sustain catching a big lake trout. So I'm gonna drop it to bottom, and basically I'm gonna start working the bait up now. So I'm gonna twitch it and reel up the slack as I go. There's no pause. I don't want to pause in there. I don't want the bait to sit as I pull it up. I don't want it to sit flat or like drift back down. I want it to be a continuous motion. So I'm popping it up and reeling the slack at the same time. So it's basically just climbing as it goes. That's it. So that is the way to work the bait when there's no fish on the graph. So when you're able to tell that there's a fish on you, underneath you, off to the sides, you really want to be able to read your graph and identify when the fish reacts with the bait. So you have to read and see what that fish is doing. So if you have a fish that comes in suspended at 45 feet, we'll say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my bait up to about 37 feet. So I'm going to get up to 37 feet and I'm either going to rip it in place. So it really dependent on the depth of water you're fishing too. So if I've got a fish coming in at 45 feet, I'm in 66 feet of water. So I'm bringing my bait up to 37 feet. So I want to bring it above that fish's plane of vision so they can see really well forward and up. They can't see great down. They will chase baits down. Once they change their plane in the water, then they can see better down. But if they're swimming horizontal, they can't see great straight down. So you want to bring that bait above them into their eyesight. So we've got our bait at 37 feet, right above the lake trout that's coming in at 45 feet. So now I'm going to rip my rattle bait in place until I see that fish react to my bait. So as soon as he reacts to my bait and engages with it, you'll see him pick up speed, or you'll see his nose turn up on the live scope or whatever graph you're using. Once you see that fish engage with your bait, you want to start reeling away from that fish at a constant pace. So once the fish is engaged, I'm going to start reeling away at a constant speed. So what I'm going to try to do is match that fish's speed and just go a tiny bit faster. So if you can adapt to that fish's speed, just get your bait moving as fast as he is, just get it going a touch faster, that lake trout will just aggressively slide up and crush that bait. So basically, as you're reeling it up at a constant speed away from him, you'll see him just curl right up to your bait on the graph, and you'll just feel pressure and it's set the hook. That's one way of getting these fish to eat the rattle bait. If you have a super non-aggressive fish, you can, they're not chasing. He chases about 5-6 feet off bottom and then drops back down. So you can drop it right into the dirt and just give it small little twitches. We'll drop this bait to the bottom here and I'll show you. So we'll try to give you an idea of what's going on with that bait on the bottom. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to drop it right into the dirt. This is for a non-aggressive fish, and this time of year we don't see a lot of it, but later on in the season you'll see a lot more non-aggressive fish. So I've dropped right to the bottom. So basically what I'm going to do is see my line go slack and then tight, slack and then tight. So I'm just giving it tiny little twitches from where it goes slack to tight. I want to find that sweet spot right there. And all that's doing is allowing that bait to sit flat on the bottom, and I'm just raising it just a tiny little bit, and it's just going to puff the sand. And these lake trout, if it's not going to work every time, it's not the best bait for doing that. But here we go, got some. So it's not the best bait for working the bottom with, but obviously you can't pull up and change your bait that fast. So you're going to twitch it on the bottom. They will pick it up sometimes, but most of the time you're better off to keep that bait moving and get them to chase it aggressively. Here we go. Come on. Straight up vertical underneath it. There it is. That guy crushed it. He charged up about 30 feet for that bait. That's too cool. Just so much fun. He's not fighting hard right now. He must be hooked in a funny manner. He's right up to the surface here. Okay, now he's doing it. Now he's fighting. Look at that. Just clear water. You can see these fish fighting down pretty far. Ooh. Decided he wanted to fight as soon as he saw the hole. He's starting to wrap himself up a bit here. He's going to come up backwards. Look at this. See if I can tail him. Tail him until we figure out what's going on. There we go. That was fun. This guy charged right up. He didn't fight hard until he hit the bottom of the ice, but look at that guy. Nice, another nice, super healthy lake trout, and they're just cool fish. I love trout fishing. They're just awesome. Oh, big fish just chased the little one on the live scope. He's chasing him hard. He chased that one to the left. He darted in. Now he's looking at my bait here. Coming up for it. There we go. That was too cool. This fish that I have on now, there was a smaller fish coming off the bottom, and this fish literally came in, raced in, and chased that other fish off. And then I got above him, and he came straight up and crushed this bait. That was too cool to see. What an aggressive fish. Just pissed off, and I just lost him at the bottom of the hole. Oh, look at the marks in that rattle bait from that fish. I've never seen anything like that. That's wild. The other one is still down there, so we're gonna see if we can pick him up now. So we're talking about size of the rattle baits. So honestly, for ice fishing, you're gonna want to use a bit smaller bait. There's some real nice rattle baits out there that come in larger sizes, but they're just too big for ice fishing. So you've got to really keep in mind the line and the rod setups that you're able to use for ice fishing. So this is the traditional size Lake Trout rattle bait right here. So this is a number 7 size. So these rattle baits are the standard size, I'd say, is about 3.5 inches for ice fishing. So you can go with a 3-inch, or you can go with a 4-inch. Anything above that starts to get pretty big. Like if you start running like a 4.5, 5-inch rattle bait, that's a pretty large size for ice fishing. You can definitely use it and try it. You will definitely limit the amount of fish that you catch by using a larger bait, but that middle size, that 3.5-inch, size 7, or about 90 millimeters, I think it is the average size rattle bait for ice fishing lake trout. We do catch big fish on them, and you catch a lot of small fish on them. So if you go with a greater size, here comes a fish here now. If you go with a greater size rattle bait, you can really restrict the amount of fish that you catch. So you got to watch that. Stick around that 3.5 inches. That's the standard size that we use to catch these fish. And it just works good for fish of all sizes. That's the main key thing. You don't want to limit the amount of fish you catch, but you know, you want to be able to catch a big fish still, and you want to be able to catch those smaller fish still. So stick to that 3.5, 4-inch size rattle baits, and that's your ideal size. You can definitely downsize from there, but remember, when you downsize these rattle baits, they get extremely light, and they don't sink at all. The sink rate is very, very slow on the smaller baits, so it makes it difficult to fish. That 3.5 is just the ideal size for sink rate, and size for catching all types of fish. So when we're talking weight of the rattle baits, honestly, I would go with the heaviest rattle bait we can find. Because of the manner that we are fishing these rattle baits in this time of the year, like, the weight doesn't matter. You're not finesse fishing them. You're not twitching them and trying to get a fish to just peck at it. They're not going to feel the weight of it, so it doesn't matter. So if you can use the heaviest rattle bait you can find, it will sink faster, which lets you get to the fish faster, and it just lets you work the bait a lot easier. So use the heaviest rattle bait that you can find, and it'll actually help you catch more fish, because when these fish are striking this bait, they're not worried about the weight. They're just eating it out of reaction. They're chasing it up and smashing the bait. They're not worried about feeling a little bit of extra weight there, and they're not going to drop it because of that. So the only way you're going to miss these fish is if you stick a hook in them and they get off. That's the only way. So they're not going to be worried about how heavy the bait is. The weight of the rattle bait is more an issue of fishing the bait properly and getting the bait to do what you want. So the heavier the rattle bait, the faster it'll sink. It'll get you down to lake trout. If you're working the water column, you're up near the surface, and you see a mark down near bottom, and you're in 80 feet of water, it can take a while to get down there with the rattle bait sometimes, depending on the brand of rattle bait that you're using. If you can use a heavier rattle bait, it'll sink a lot faster. It'll get you down to those fish and effectively catch you more fish. So the weight's not a significant factor in actually losing fish because it's too heavy. It's not like walleye fishing where you're using lighter jig. It just helps you fish the bait better the more heavy the bait is. So use the heaviest rattle bait you can find. And honestly, if somebody out there makes custom rattle baits, and you can make one that's twice the weight of all these baits that are on the market right now, it will fish way better for these lake trout. You could just work that bait way better, cover more water, and just work it effectively for these lake trout. But nobody's done it yet. We should honestly like take a few into the shop and drill a hole in them and fill them with lead. But I mean, there's a bit more science behind that. You have to get the balance right and everything. But hey, if you could make one of these baits twice the weight that they are right now, that would be the ultimate rattle bait for lake trout. I'm just going to clear off a little bit of this ice here and have a bit more visibility of the fish fighting and stuff. Just looks a little cooler, so we'll shovel this off. Okay, see, I've got this mark moving up high in the water column here. He's just under 20 feet, so I'm going to get up to his level. Now I'm just jigging it in place right in front of him. There, he engaged with it. Is he going to hit? He's right under the surface here. We can probably see him. Look at that fish right there. See him right under the ice. Oh, he just missed it. I don't know if you saw that. Now he's taking off. Now he's coming back to look at it here. There he is. You can see him ripping around down there. Okay, enough spinning around. Let's try to catch this fish. There he is. In the last hour or so, the fish have actually kind of slowed down a lot. Look at that. Going nuts under there. How cool is that? You see what I mean? They're just little actor. Oh, wait, unhooked himself and he wrapped himself up. That's wild. Look at that. Unhooked right at the ice and he looped himself up, lassoed himself. Okay. Gotta keep that away from your gills, buddy. There we go. Cool is that? Just watching him under the ice like that. He's bleeding a bit. We're gonna get him right back here. When that line gets wrapped in their gills like that, it can get them bleeding up a little bit, but that was weird. But you see how crazy they are under the ice like that, and man, they can just flip around, zip around, sideways, backwards, whatever way to roll around. So I actually lost him there, and he lassoed himself, and we brought him up the rest of the way. How crazy is that? But man, it's just wild seeing them do that. That's why I cleared this ice off so we could get a good view of what's going on. It turned out pretty cool. Rattle baits are a great bait to add to your bag of tricks for lake trout fishing through the ice and even open water. They just work awesome and they're a ton of fun to fish. Super easy to do too. It's a very good bait for beginners to fish, and just an all-around versatile bait for fishing lake trout. Well, I hope this video has taught you a thing or two about rattle baits for lake trout, and you can add it to your bag of tricks that will eventually end up in helping you catch more fish. So thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you on the next video.